So let me just, I said last week I'll mention a few halachas which the Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring down. One halacha is that Minat Torah, very interesting. If you learn Daf Yomi, you'll bump into it too soon. That Minat Torah, a ger really needs three things. Needs bris, a man needs a bris, a lady, and a tefillah. A lady needs tefillah and a korban. He has to bring a sacrifice, a korban. Shtei Torah, mashnei b'nei yoina. And the Gemara says it is not ma'akev. The Gemara brings everything's psukim. The Gemara brings a posik that not ma'akev means that it is takes effect. You know? But originally they made it kana. Every ger had to put money away. So Mashiach is going to come. The money is going to buy the korban. But then you know what happens? Somehow the money gets spent. You know, the Gemara always says cash lying around is always dangerous. So, and that means they were moil behegdish. So they were masakin, they don't have to put it away. But every ger has to know, like Yeris, the Mashiach comes, they have to bring a korban. That's the Santa halacha. Then there's another very important halacha. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't discuss it over here at all. We really need a bezdin smuchim. You know what smuch means? There's two types of dayanim. Really, the dayanim have to be smicha. Smicha means not what we call smicha. It goes back to from Moshe, with Somech Yeshua, the Zekanim, and that's Yisrael. And smucha stopped this mana goinim. Some say mana rishonim. We don't have any more smuchim. So that means that we really need. So they want to ask the question: if dayanim need to be smuchim, how do we have judges today who make chalitza? But I think you learn in the Masechta, chalitza needs and geiris. So the Gemara says, "Anam shlichasai de kadmua." We are shliach of the early bezdin. Bezdin in the early times realized that it's going to become extinct. For that reason, they made us. So we are we make a geiris. We are shliach of the early smuchim, because really, what do you say?
When you say early, that means goes back to the last.
Oh, the last smuchim. Some say oinim, some say the early, whatever it was. What did you say? I don't know what. The calendar, but smuchim still went on. No, the smuchim went on. So. Because we later learn, otherwise we have a problem with chalitza, we have a problem because chalitza needs a bezdin and geiris needs a bezdin. Okay.
Somebody didn't make sure he had a bris.
It's not a convert.
He comes out as not a convert.
Did it have a bris?
He didn't have a bris, and they converted him.
Yeah, but the question is, if he was circumcised anyways before, no, that's not a bris. Better. Let me. Not a conversion, I'm sorry. It's not a conversion. Let me even say better. He didn't accept fully the Kabbalah's mitzvahs. If a lady says that I cannot keep everything too much. I had a case where many years ago I got a phone call with someone and he's asking me Hilchos Shabbos, I sold the business for him, and one day he calls me up and he says to me that he's a Bishul Akim, my wife cooks. What is your wife cooking Bishul Akim? I didn't understand this question. And finally he tells me my wife is not Jewish. I said, what? So I asked his son. So the son became from, made his father from. It's the second marriage for his father. And there's no tissues here. Sorry. And he really is. She wants to do everything. One thing she cannot imagine. She cannot imagine not driving Shabbos. She keeps Pesach. She keeps everything. I cannot be housebound. Something like this. You say in English, house and Shabbos. She just wants to keep everything. I said, we can't make a case this way. She says she'll be tznius. He explained to me that, she happens to have a good taste of clothing, she knows how to dress well, but tznius, that's not a problem. Shabbos is too much, not to watch TV and not to, just too much. Well, it's a suffagatus. I mean, because I explained last week that we only make a tufis damris lechumre. You were here last week. I explained that we let blood, if there was a circumcision, anyways, we make a drop of blood lechumre only.
Is it possible to make a conversion on a Tanai? I met a Dioris once, and she said that I got the conversion, but there was a Tanai. If I didn't keep the mitzvahs, the conversion wouldn't be bottled. Something like that.
I heard about this. I did hear about this.
They don't give them the document until they're from for a year or two.
No, I heard about this. I was going to look it up at Reb Chaim. I was told that Reb Chaim Oizaz a tshuva about that, and I'm going to have to look it up. Someone once asked me this question many years ago, and I remember it sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Shlomo Kluger wrote a tshuva, I think in two Ramadas, that why women obligated issues that.
Yeah, he has a tshuva about it.
Because he's saying he brings the whole Gemara about the Zoya that I think it was Rabbi or Rabbi that didn't have a relation with her and she converted.
But she didn't convert for that.
So he says that the instigator is the get issues, but by the time the Bezdin Shalom say a year, then they're going to get the Shemitz.
Yeah, but often it's very clearly. I've been involved. It's so clear. The only reason she wants to be Jewish because, look, my husband wants to be Jewish, and I want to be married. I've watched this.
Then they come in because of that, but then 2 years later.
Yeah, I mean that's I explained last week. Tosis asked the famous question. A ger came to Hillel Azukan to Shammai. A grain, he make me a ger. I'm an ass. I'm going to wear big de kahuna. He liked her. So Shammai took Alma Sabinian, kicked him out, chased him out of it. The Gemara says he took a thing, get out of here. Came to Hillel. Hillel says, okay. And he made him a ger. And then we learned the Chumash says if you wear the big de kahuna, azar, it's chai misa. He made a kavachayim. Madach, a Jewish, who was born Jewish, wears the big de kahuna, does the voida, it's chai misa. I'm a gegoy. And so Tosis says, so how was he megayed him? Tosis says he saw that he was very sincere. And Mishigas, Tosis says he saw he was sincere. So the Shulchan Aruch says the Bezdin has to see this. Often, I was once involved, and I was very skeptical, and I turned out to be right. A year or two later, she threw away the whole Yiddishkeit. Because I saw the whole thing. I have Geirim I done, which is unbelievable.
Now, if a woman is getting converted to marry a kohen, I would say that there's no Kabbalah mitzvahs because
right.
Because she's doing it to marry someone who cannot marry.
Right. Right, for sure. I watched, the people become a ger who's very sincerely. I did a couple, and I did it once. She thought she was Jewish. She had no idea she was not Jewish. She went to day school. Her mother was the one who raised them Jewish. When she got married, the Rav asked her, is any ger? Yeah, my mother was a geridus. Who made the geridus? Turns out it was a conservative rabbi. She said, it was so funny because my mother was the one who pushed religion at home. She was the one who made Chanukah, and my father was very passive. And my mother insisted we go to private Jewish schools, So the end was she was just devastated that she found out she's not Jewish. She wanted to be, but she was conservative, conservative, and she took upon herself everything.
It's an interesting question. Somebody like that grows up and spends years observing, doesn't know that they're not Jewish. Do they have to then?
Yes, you have to make a gatus. The full thing. I asked her. We have to ask her. Yeah, because I think we turned out, if I remember well, her conversion was not a good conversion to mothers. And we said she started crying. She says, "My whole identity is being Jewish. I am absolutely the one, But that's a good. But you have sometimes Geirim. So many problems where all of a sudden, Moshe says, you see all of them. Moshe in the Tshuva says, I mentioned this, that he doesn't like it. See, they keep and then they fall apart. There are few that stay very firm, no question. Many, I would say. But very many just because, it's a 50% chance it won't last because Shalom Bayis only survives 50%.
Yeah, but the 50%, some of them also stay.
Yeah, that's true. We have someone in community. She, he got divorced and she's from. Yeah, she's very from. Okay, that's one thing I wanted to say. I wrote down a few things that the Aruch HaShulchan brings down. So there's another famous question. You know, the question is, which the poskim is, why? You know, if you learn, any of you learned Daf Yomi besides the Rabbi? No. So you had a Gemara before. The Gemara will be later again. If the question is, Geira Royes Geiris Emerson or not Geiris? You know, if someone was Megair because of the lions, the Kittim got, you know the story? Or Elchonon, or because I want to get married. So the Rishonim ask, so why is it a good Geiris? Let's take, he's terrified of a lion. So he has no, I don't want to be Jewish, but you know, the lions, every day the lions come in, someone becomes lunch. So rather become Jewish than be a lunch to the lions.
No, I don't think this way.
No, this is the Rishonim ask the Kasha. It's not sincere. Moshe Shem Ishis. It's not sincere.
The Gemara says that they accepted, it's just that they were worshiping
Later they found
birds.
That's something else. They were later they found out it wasn't sincere. But the question is, forget the kutum. The Gemara says Geir Aroyes, we pass in Geir, it's accepted.
when could they make it?
So the Rishonim say a very interesting thing. There's a,
Hashem held the mountain over us.
Very good.
so the Rishonim bring a Gemara. There's a very famous Gemara. Kliya v'zoven zvina zvina. That means like this: if you force someone to sell something, and you tell them, if you're not going to sell it to me, I'm going to kill you. I'll beat the mafia. Guy once told me that his grandfather sold the business, and the mafia paid the going price. But they came in, and the first thing they took out a gun, put it on the table, and let's talk business. And they paid. He told me his father always said that they paid but the value, but they wanted the business. So the Gemara says, you sold it, it's sold because you got money, you got the value for it. I didn't want to sell it, I would love to keep it, but if you sold it, so the Rishonim want to say, if a guy did it because of fear, but you got something, you think he didn't want to do it. You got married to a Jewish man, you got married to a Jewish lady, or you're terrified. So that's why the Geiris is good Geiris. Because you're not, the question is a very, very important question that Rishonim ask. He only wants to become a Jew because he wants to marry you. You don't want to be a Jew.
That initiated the process.
Yeah, but it's not sincere. I don't want to be a Jew. I'm in love with Jimmy, or the uncle, or the vice versa. And and you're young, and what would I do for love? And and then that's what they think. So the Rishonim say the Tosis and I think the Miki Yosef explains it. Works this way because we paskin kliv is oven. We in any transaction besides a get, you force a get because he got nothing out of it. The Gemara says, but if it's not a get, you got something. The Chazal learn. That's a whole sugya about Basar, but even Tlum v'Kiddush, Machlokes Kiddush and Kiddushin, if they're born of Kid, they're born of Kiddushin, but they explain the Geiris works with this concept. So, yeah, but B'diavad we paskin. The Geiris say, but like Tchila says the Shulchan Aruch, you're not allowed to, absolutely not allowed to be megair to someone if you know that the only reason doing issues. It says clearly. I mean, look, I saw the Moshe in the Tshuva is very annoyed. Then the Moshe has someone asked last week. The Olim was not here. Two people asked this question. Oh yeah, when Danny said. But I want to explain something. They asked this question. And I know this goes around and. You have to tell the child, we spoke last week, you make a Geiris for the child, when do you tell him, can he protest? We're busy asking this question last week. So the Moshe has a tshuva, some Sefer has a tshuva, and it's based on the Shittim Mikibetzes and Sechtes Ksubas. That when do we say that a person, again, let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about adopting a child. The famous question was, and I told you that the many poskim held, and I think the Rabbi was inclusive. Said this. I mean, I remember I've seen it many years ago. The Moshe and the Rabbi Yashav held. The Gemara says kosher Geirim leisukas apachas. We don't look for Geirim. So a person cannot have children. goes and he adopts a child. I have a good friend of mine, didn't have children. He adopted a Mexican child. And, he didn't want it, but his wife was just miserable. And adopted a child. So now, the child that he adopted, that the Moshe has a tshuva, and he says when the child becomes old, you have to tell him, but the bar mitzvah, do you want to be Jewish or not? But if a child the parents made him into a geiris, you don't ask the child, because the Sefer has a means of shit mikibetz, and he says, because it was a schis godel for the child that the parents became a geiris, and if he wouldn't have not been geiris, they wouldn't have taken with them. You're not supposed to raise a goy. So it's a schus godel that you had parents. It's a big schus that the real parents. Nothing is like the real parents. With all adoption, so mele the schis godel, the child cannot be moicha. He brings a raya. The Moshe brings a raya from a guas ashri. Very interesting, the guas ashri. The guas ashri says that the words of the guas ashri are difficult. The guas is a rishon. He says if the child got married to someone, later is moicha, it comes out the Jewish lady lived with a goy.
What was this again?
If a child got married to a lady, and if he could protest as being Jewish,
If he's the husband, so bad.
why aren't you worried that lady is going to protest? And it turns out you were living with a goy, because he's not. Turns out retroactive was not Jewish. The Moshe asked a very important question
In
here.
other words, he married a non-Jew. He was
No.
She married a minor.
She married a minor. Now the Moshe says he can't learn in the Guas Ashi meant really a minor. Chazal did not institute marriages for minors. He goes through the whole sugya. So he says a big chiddush. Here we're talking about an adopted child, and he has a right to protest if he did not know that he was a ger even as older. That's a big chiddush, he says. That means an adopted child was not aware that he was adopted, converted, and he finds out as a teenager he could protest. He had no idea, but that's why he didn't protest.
He's saying that adopted can't protest.
Only but a non-adopted child, the parents became geris, some sofer holds you cannot be moicha. That's why you don't have to. People were busy. When do you tell them? Someone asked me in his family. I didn't understand last week. I said this is not, and the fact that you have to ask is a chiddush of Reb Moshe. Others don't even bring it down. Moshe holds by adopted child. You have to ask the child because he was a goy, and your Jew adopted him, and it's a schus. Maybe when he gets older, he says it would have been much better to be a goy. How do you know what he would have said?
Can I have clarification on the previous case? The people that converted by the lion,
You have to speak up, huh?
the Kutim that converted by the lions, that was a good conversion?
So that's a machlekes in the Gemara. We pass in kiti geiros and it's a kosher geiros. The only reason they couldn't, we noticed that they never accepted Yiddishkeit. They accepted being Jewish, but we got to worship Har Gerizim.
Outside of that, they would have been accepted.
Right, that's how we pass in.
But we don't accept somebody that converts for marriage. So what's the difference?
No. We don't accept anyone who has alternative motive. Let it be lying, let it be dreams, let it be a love.
They did it,
But once it's done, it's good. They all are the same category. You follow? All the same category. You have to do it because I love Yiddishkeit. But you have it, right. So everyone, so many gators are b'di'evet, which clearly, the only reason he became Jewish, and it works sometimes. A lot of people claim if they couldn't make it into a Geiris, he'll never been a Jewish. He never would have been from. I have someone in my community, clearly that way. The only reason she became a Geiris, this was a girlfriend to him, and he became from in the college campuses. Someone had the only reason, they were living together, and she says, listen, you are becoming Jewish, are you becoming religious? I'll also become religious. I don't want to lose you. She said clearly. And they're very from, our house full of children, you will never believe that she's a Geiris. But the evidence good. And not only the evidence good, if the person quits Yiddishkeit afterwards, he's a mummer. It's not that. The story with the kitten, we say that they never even kept a week not to worship the idols. They kept on worshiping the idols. That's what they discovered. Understand the difference? I told you that many years ago there was a story in Chabad where they asked me where the guy was converted And a few weeks later, they got she didn't realize that he's a drunk. Every Shabbos he got drunk and hit her, and got separated, and he ran away. So they wanted to say maybe his Geiris never was a kosher Geiris but he kept the first few Shabbosim. She admitted. Remember, she telling us he really kept Shabbos. Nothing to talk about. When the marriage deteriorated, that's when, I tell people marriage deteriorates, even from people the Yiddishkeit deteriorates. I watch that all the time. People showing bias falls apart, the whole Yiddishkeit falls apart. Unfortunately, for some reason. But he kept, and Baruch Hashem, she got a get. I always tell, but Halacha cannot do, cash does. For $5,000, he gave a get. They didn't have to raise so much money. Okay, that's one thing. We're off topic over here. So I want to say something, because again, last week someone asked me this, about adoption. And Moshe has the tshuva. I think the Lubavitcher Rebbe didn't want adoption was because of yichud and that problem. And Moshe explains in the tshuva another very important halacha. Lubavitcher Rebbe talked about practical, which I see it. I see people adopting children have a huge practical question about yichud. I have a close friend who, Baruch Hashem, now they got married, but his wife could never live. If he was home, there's a really yichud problem. Anyway, so the Moshe has another problem. If you adopt a goy, you're not supposed to make it again. You adopt a Jewish child, and you know the parents are Jewish. First of all, you have to know how do you know about just because they say they're Jewish. Second of all, maybe they were adopted him because the child is a mamzer. So how could it be a mamzer? Because maybe the brother-in-law lived with the sister-in-law. One of the cases where I was called about sexual abuse, I don't like that they put my name in the Crown Heights Watch. I don't have to tell them to take off, but I was called recently, where a girl claims, they told them to go to the police, that means her brother-in-law seduced her. She was 16 years old. So mamish achas ishtoi. He's chayiv chorus twice. A 16-year-old is probably a niddah, and it's his wife's sister. Okay? The question was, when the mother called, that it wasn't that he raped her, he seduced her, and it says, go to the police anyways. That's, because, your daughter's going to be traumatized. But the point is, so the Moshe has in the tshuva, you have to always know, maybe the child is a mamzer. So maybe there's a chasish, maybe,
In that case, the child is a mamzer?
if she would have become pregnant, the child is a mamzer. That's a chos ishtoi mean. You know what chos ishtoi means? Your wife's sister is, if a person lives with the wife's sister, the child is a mamzer.
I thought it was if somebody seduced a married woman.
No. Any chayve krisis besides a niddah. And the Moshe says you also find out maybe the aunt lived with the nephew. Maybe it also could be a mamzer. You know what I mean? So that's maybe they gave for adoption. Because that's a Gemara. It's based on the Gemara. That's called a Sifa and a Shtika. Unless, then he goes through, even though if you know everything good, he goes through why it's not a good idea to adopt a child. That's why halachically was against it. Okay, I as a Rav, I was involved twice, where you had to figure out why the child was adopted.
Why they gave it up?
Right, and Baruch Hashem, both times we had documented why he gave it up.
I used to spend a lot of time in Asia, and I would often see couples that were coming to Asia. They were heading to a place in China, Guangzhou.
The what? They want the what?
Heading to southern China, to a place called Guangzhou, and huge numbers of adopted. I don't know how many, hundreds, I think thousands of from families were adopting over the course of many years, girls out of China. So,
yeah, but Moshe says it's not a mitzvah. It's can't say that once you adopted a child. There's a famous book written that the bamboo cradle. She once came to speak in the community over here, and she describes an incredible. She has 8 or 9 children herself, and she's a frum girl, and it turned out to be great. But we don't look for it because sometimes I hear stories, it's a disaster. So we don't look for it. People do it, it doesn't make it right. The question, once it's done, there's no question. She's a kosher gators and everything is okay, and that's not a question.
So Moshe says that they also can be asked when they're bar.
But that's when you have to ask. This is the case where Moshe says if they was adopted, they have to, because it wasn't such a schus. When a child adopted, because when the parents were Megayer, it's a schus gadol. Because they can't change their mind. Who's going to take care of you? Might your parents, because the best caretakers are the parents. Adopt, it would have been another guy would have adopted me, and a guy would have adopted me. Baruch Hashem, one of the great things I thank Hashem is today with medical science, more people have children. When I was a young man, I have a few friends, acquaintances who didn't have children. Today it's less and less. I know the people have problems, they come ask me the shalas, and Baruch Hashem, it's just a question how long they wanted IVF and how much money, but the end is there's very few who don't have children. You know what I mean? Baruch Hashem, with this miracle science, is unbelievable. Unbelievable. For that reason, probably.
No, I think for other reasons also.
Because?
Because, 50 years ago, if a girl got pregnant,
She gave up the child.
She gave up the child. Today, somebody has a child out of wedlock, it's not a big deal today.
Well.
Yeah, but also with the medical science, like women are buying eggs now.
Right.
Using other people's eggs. So is that better than adopting?
No, well, that's a huge problem. That's because you have to know who the mother is. You're not allowed to do that. Yeah. I mentioned this once before. There's a din, let me repeat this again on the record, that there's a din, a person, also you learn Yivamas, a person is not allowed to get married, he lives in this town. The good old days, they didn't have internet and, and sharing and whatever it's called, social sharing? Social network. So a person gets married here, moves, goes to Bovel, and wants to be for 6 months. He wants to take a wife while he's there. So you shouldn't do it, because if he's going to have a child there, maybe the brother is going to meet the sister and they're going to get married. That's what the Gemara says. So that means if you take someone's eggs, we have to document and somehow make sure publicly whose eggs you're taking. Because if you don't make it public, Moshe has old true, I have to look it up again, how many people need to know, because then you're going to have a child. The child is not her child. The eggs were taken, let's say, from Sarah. So maybe Sarah's going to have a son, and the son or the daughter are going to get married.
There's a big scandal in Irvine with this.
Yeah, but he cheated. He gave his own zera.
No, that's a different case. That was in New York.
No, Irvine. In Irvine.
Okay, but this is the original. The guys who came up with the current, with IVF, with this in vitro fertilization.
Yeah.
They're two Jewish doctors.
And they ran to Brazil.
And they ran one to Mexico City and the other to
Brazil.
I was to Argentina. He was Argentinian, but I knew him actually. But it came out. I was living in Irvine at the time.
But they used their own sperm.
No. That's not what was happening. When they would implant, they would create an embryo in a dish, right? And they would freeze it, and then they would implant it in the woman. They implant several because only a certain number would actually take, and there was no mashkiach. So they would say, we need an embryo, take one from the drawer. They didn't care whose it was. To them, they literally said, they were interviewed, they said it's biological tissue. What did they care? And they were giving parents the children of other parents, of other people.
Well, I read it, I remember a little differently. It could be, my memory, remember it differently? You remember some? I remember the two Jewish doctors I remember the Lubavitcher Rebbe was right. Why do I remember? Because Rabbi Shoichet wrote a kinteris about this, and then he gave it to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, you must have a mishgiach, because you can't trust them. And then when this story came out, Rabbi Shoichet called me up, see, the Rebbe had Ruach HaKodesh, and Because I remember reading then that they used their own sperm.
Yeah.
Remember that? I also remember they used their
It was a
own.
different case.
No,
It
I
wasn't the
remember,
original.
I remember his case.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I mean, the other case,
And the reason that it came out is because it was in. I don't have a TV. I was told by the people in my shul is that there was an interview. A lady with the shaitel, but they blurred out her face. She had a child. It didn't resemble not him and not her. And that's when DNA started coming out. And to check the DNA, he wasn't the father. And that's what the child is not a mamzer anyways. Doesn't make a difference.
Because there's no bia.
There's no bia. The child's not a mamzer. Okay, let's move on. What do you say? Yeah, but they don't mean mamzer. You know, the Matter says that it's a problem. Atzichas. See, the Moshe held you allowed to do like a tchil, and that's what the Satmar Rebbe disagreed very ultimately. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What did you just say?
no, it's a different.
It's a different case.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just move on. So let me explain another halacha. If a lady is megayer herself and she's pregnant, a huge chiddush in the Gemara, Chava brings it down. If she's megayer, she's pregnant, the gatus helps. What we can learn inside the Shulchan Aruch. The gatus helps for the child. It's a big chiddush. And the Gemara asked the Kashi, why is it not chatzitza? Famous Gemara. So that means that the mother is megayer and she's pregnant, and the gatus helps for the child too, because the child went in. The Gemara says the chatzitza, since the child needs, has to be in the wound, and that's hinder vise. How would you translate the vise? That's the child lives, and that's the child thrives. So it's not a chatzitza.
Also because the mother didn't need tefillah.
The Gemara doesn't say that. That's a famous question. But the Gemara says, Haine Revise. We're going to soon have a daf yomi. But Al Kaponim, the tefillah helps for a pregnant woman, for the baby. And the baby does not need anything now. We don't say it comes out now and needs a Kabbalah Smith. Nothing. The tefillah helps for the baby too. I just wanted to say over Shach. The two Shach. One Shach is that he says that there's a minik to cut off your hair. That's Shach Zayin. And they say it over. So the Shach Mashma, he says that there's a minik to cut off the hair.
Cut off the hair
Of a guy, you tell him, hey, before you come to the mikveh, take a haircut.
So what about in this case of the woman who was pregnant? What is the yichus of the baby though? Is that
The Gemara talks about it. It belongs to, it's a yichus, it's to the mother. This abri shloi begedusha v'noile begedusha. It's a whole sugya later. That we save the brothers, our brothers, the gabi. You're learning enough yom. You see you later. 15 blood from now, 10 blood from now. But anyways, the Shach says the agavdik. There's a mitzvah. You become a ger, you should take a haircut. One of the questions is, what about a lady? How much hair does she have to cut off? So I know there's people who'd want to test the woman if she means it sincere. They tell her you should cut off your hair an inch or two. If she comes with a haircut, cut off hair, he knows she meant it sincerely. Because you have a shach in front of you. Look at shach Zayin. Which page is that by you? Tzadik Hey. You have the shach Zayin. He says, Yesh Omen, Shach is on the right side, Sif Sikoyin. So he says, Mashma film ein chatzitza b'saroysa kan sheyichev scrub yisri and kom heitev or yigus mixer saroysa v'kshirim, took out the hair that's knotted, chatzitzim, which after became yigalach called saroysov, shenechnas akal yahadis. You should cut off your hair. So yigalach kol saroysov. Now we don't say the ba lady. You should have chenkus abach. Tiresar beger yalpi divid Moshe darshan shevirashe pashe baloischu chayne minig memimrim keshachazon adas minere bi evel lo gidich sarak shendu v'choytz avetfila.
So she should cut off all her hair.
Oh, it doesn't say. It doesn't say. This is a question that Achronim are troubled.
Oh.
What about? It doesn't say what happens with the lady. The Geirim say the lady doesn't. Some say a little bit, and it doesn't say mention anything.
For a man, he should.
Right. Okay, let's go now to Siv Zion. Above Siv Kittis, Siv it is. Kittis, the Yud says Kittis or Ovid Gechoven. This is a censored, because the times of the Shulchan Aruch, by the Ashkenazim, you were not allowed to make a Geiris. The Aruch HaShulchan brings in his times it was illegal to make a Geiris.
The Geirim didn't allow.
They're not allowed.
What years was the Aruch
Shulchan lived right before World War One.
Really? It was illegal?
Yeah, and he lived in Lithuania. I think in Minsk he lived. Kittis, shenes gaira, kittis means a goy. V'himi beres bro ein tzurich tefillah. It helps for the child. You don't need a tefillah. And the Gemara says that it's not even a chatzitza. Because we say that the water, so it's a big chiddush. It's a I remember the first time I learned this, I had a hard time swallowing it. But it has to be wet. It has to get wet. Here, the child is in the mother's womb, and the child, no water gets to the child whatsoever. It's an incredible chiddush. No water. It's a miga that help. But that it has to get wet, but it's in the mikveh. It has to get wet. If you have put into keli but no water gets in, it's not going to help. Here, a lady goes into the mikveh and she's pregnant. It's like going putting a child in a vacuum, and it helps. So the Gemara says, why? Because we say this is how the child lives, so it's not a chatzitza. So you see, it's not that the water has to touch it. It has to be that you're inside the body of water, but and even doesn't touch the child, but since the child needs the mother to live there, the tefillah helps. Yeah. This is also a raya, not my raya, but other being a raya, that from this Gemara shows that a fetus is a living person. Because the Gemara, if you learn Yavamas, you didn't learn the daf yet over there, it's much later, I'm Zion. The Gemara's question, Iba Yerech Imoy, Iba Lav Yerech Imoy. The Gemara has it said, even though Iba Lav Yerech Imoy, the Gemara understood that the reason Iba Yerech Iba means it's part of the mother. So we understand. But if you hold Iba Lav Yerech Imoy, we see that how does the Gemara asks, why does it help? Because the child went to a child. You see, it's called an independent child, independent person. Because there's many kashas in Gemara. Sometimes you see the Gemara calls a fetus an independent nefesh. A goy who makes an abortion is chayiv misa. It's called murder. It's very frightening.
Unless they have a text.
No, there's a bit. What?
If they're going to save the mother.
Like that's a question if a goy is allowed to do that. So it's a question in the Gemara. If a goy has the chai behem l'shumas b'hem, it's a question in the Gemara and the Rishonim. Yeah, that's by Yid. But what happens? The doctor says to a lady that if you don't have abortion, you're going to die. By goyim, you don't say they have a right to the chai behem. You don't say by the Gemara has a suffix. You say that by goyim now. I think when it comes up, you don't. You understand the question is? No. You're not allowed to have an abortion. So the rabbi is asking, what happens? The doctor says to the lady, if you don't have an abortion, you will die. I only once had to tell a lady to take an abortion. They found she had cancer. She had to start chemotherapy.
Which kills the baby anyway.
Kills the baby anyways. And if she would have waited, the cancer would kill her. And there's documented cases where child was born, the mother died, this type of a cancer. So you're allowed to have an abortion to save the mother's life.
So converting
But a goy is not allowed to do that.
He cannot perform it.
No, a goy cannot make an abortion to save the mother's life. We don't have that concept. But an abortion is ritzicha, is murder. Many people don't realize that.
Well, for a goy to have an abortion,
The Gemara says goy makes abortions at a tzeiach.
On any circumstances?
Any circumstances.
but for a Jewish woman,
When a Jewish woman is in danger of health, but a Jewish woman is also ritzicha.
interesting.
I mean, it is.
So it's preferable then to convert a child in utero than it is to have a child and convert after.
But is there an advantage of Udas the Kedusha?
The Gemara does speak about it.
Meaning the child can throw off the conversion if after, but cannot throw off the conversion if while still with the mother. So it's preferable to convert a child while it's still in utero than it is to have the baby and convert.
No, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. We paskin. It's a very good question what he's asking. Yeah, did you have the Dugam Avoga inside your print?
Yeah.
You want to tell the people where it is?
Yeah, okay, this page 190 to the right.
Your question is discussed in the Dugam Avova. On the right side, the rabbi says is in the right side.
Okay.
It says like this: Im yodi abez the mishas tzvila shimi beres. They had him poshet. Aber yodi abez the shimi beres yeshi b'zeriches dvurim. Natalia b'asheran kemek hanarich. That means that he has this question if it's a pregnancy, and we say that we don't bezn. Let me explain something. I'm jumping ahead. The next Shulchan Aruch says that a bezn has a right to megair a child, because it's a schus. Either the father brings it or bezn. If you adopt a child, you're not the father. If you're not the father, what schus do you have to make him the gators? Bezdin takes upon themselves as being the father of the child, and they say it's a schus, and they make the gators. Okay? So what happens? The mother comes, and she's pregnant. Does the Bezdin need to know that she's pregnant and megair the ifiris al das Bezdin, or the Bezdin have no idea, and it's also. So Noida says that's a suffix. Because as a suffix, how we look at it. Do we look at it as Iba Yerechimahi? It's a whole, I don't know if he doesn't bring it down what he spared, but it's a whole difficult sugya. How do we look at it? Do we look at it as part of the mother? So Bez doesn't need to know. It's just a limb of the mother. Or do we look at it as a separate entity? If you look at it as a separate entity, then you have to, Bez has to know. What was your question? That was your question, right?
What's better?
So I'm saying that according to some Rishonim, it's better because it's connected to the mother.
Going back to the other discussion between the idea of abortion for a Jewish woman, where you have, where her life is in danger, versus a non-Jewish woman. With a non-Jewish woman, why is it an issue in Halacha? Because she's not obligated to Halacha anyway.
A non-Jewish woman is murder.
7 laws.
7 laws.
Okay,
That means that an abortion, the Torah considers murder. It's really frightening because, today, I always say over a story. Many years ago, a lady calls me up, and she says she wants to make an abortion. I have 5 children ready. My husband was in an accident. I'm not able to support the baby. And she's a lady from lady with a shaitel everything. So I said to her, don't make you're not allowed to make, you're killing the baby. I said to her, I have so many community willing to pay you money to adopt a child, but they can't have children. She said, I'm going to sell my baby, she tells me. So I said, you're going to murder her? She had the baby, she wouldn't give it up. Because that's when I first, since then I had others asking, because the people listen to radio, the Goyish world, and abortion, according to the Torah, is ritzicha.
There's a concept of 40 days.
The Moshe says there's no basis for that.
Well, where is the basis for this?
You learn Daf Yomi? Later, the Gemara talks about it because it's my Ba'alma. The Gemara talks about it. So the Moshe says, I think the Psham Zalma did held about the 40 days. But Moshe did not hold from the 40 days. But the point is, people have abortions after 40 days. No.
I'm saying before the 40 days.
So but people ask me, I tell them it's Ritzicha. If Moshe held is Ritzicha, I cannot tell. We're not talking about muktzah, not muktzah. We're talking about murder or not murder. You know, we think, what bracha, they make such a bracha, that bracha. The Moshe held, it's murder. Unfortunately, when, it happens, Jewish girls become pregnant. But, and they unfortunately have an abortion. The ones who don't do this, and I got someone to go to Israel. There's a special place where they have for such people. Okay. Now, this is Mechaber Zayin. Oive Gechoven Kuten. A guy has a child, a young Goyish child. Im Yeshloi Av, Yuchal Gair Oisoi. The father can be Gair. And Eloi Av, Ibula is Gair. He wants to be Gair himself. Oy Ima Biv Yusel is Gair. Now the mother has no rights to the child. I hope people are not going to be upset when they hear me say this. The Torah gives the right, there's a fight between the parents who should raise the child. It's very ridiculous. No one really owns the child. The child is not furniture. To raise it is the Rambam learns, there's nothing to who's the owner. The owner of the child.
What's the starting case here?
The starting case is, how could a child, the Rambam says like this, the Mechaber quotes the Rambam, if a father, a goy, brings a child, he says, I want to be guy, my child be accepted. The mother comes, who are you? So then Bezdin becomes the father of the child. That means,
Boys with boys and girls with girls.
so that's a din. So the Rabbi is asking this question. The Rambam says boys goes to the father and the girls go to the mother. But then the Rambam says, what happens? Both don't want to raise the child. You hear such stories. He said the child goes to the father. He is responsible for the child. We give a boy to the father because the father has to teach him Torah. The girl to the mother has to teach her to be a lady. So we give them because it's best for the child. That's why we do this. But the responsibility of a child belongs to the father. Huraya, if both don't want it. So there's a Rai from the Gemara Yevomis. The Gemara says that Rav had a very difficult wife. Rabbi Yitzchak was the Rav again. He said every time he asked his wife to do something, she did the opposite. You know famous Gemara? What? No, Brudia wasn't. Well, this is about Rav. Rav Nachman was a different story. She was about Kaisen. But this was Samach Beisim. But basically, the Yevomis talks about everything. I want potatoes, she would make lox, she wanted everything. So the Gemara says, his son asked her, Marli Mamuvis, Mutza Isha, Mutza Toiv, and Mutza Isha, Marli Mamuvis. Sometimes a wife could be more than death. Give me a marshal. Your mother's that way. So one day he bought her a gift. He brings a gift home. So the son asks, Dad, didn't you say it's bitter? He says, Dayan, it's enough. Shematzaleini min achet. She saved me from sinning. And regardless as Benani, she raised the children. She has to raise it. No. It's your responsibility to raise her. You have to thank your wife for raising the children. That's not me. The Rishonim bring the wife. The Rambam, that's what the Rambam's makar. The Rambam holds the chiyuv, the responsibility. If both don't want it, I had a Baal Tshuva came to my house. She told me the most frightening story I ever heard. Her father is a famous psychiatrist on the TV. I don't know what TV, but talk show, some psychiatrist. Her mother wrote a few books. She's a psychologist, and when they got there was both didn't want her.
Wow.
Imagine this. Father didn't want her. The mother didn't want her. I don't want the headache. So she wound up living alone.
At what age?
16.
Wow.
This is a psychiatrist and a psychologist, a talk show lady. I don't mean TV lady. I don't know exactly what she explained to me, but it's the first time I heard such a thing. But the Rambam says, what is the halacha? Both don't want it. Then the father's responsibility. The mother could say, I don't want the girls. I don't want anything. Not the chiyuv. If a husband divorces his wife, is she still nursing? The husband has to pay the wife for being a vet nurse. Vet nurse, it's your child. No. It's your responsibility. So if I'm nursing, you have to pay how much they pay a vet nurse to nurse the child. Very interesting. So this is also what it says in Shulchan Aruch over here. If the father is the and it brings the child, okay, he has a responsibility on the child. The mother, that's not her responsibility. So it doesn't negate that the woman should not raise the children. You understand? A child needs a mother, needs a father. We don't disagree. The question is the ultimate, whose responsibility is it? The Torah says it belongs to the father. That's the ultimate responsibility. That's why the Rabbi says, since I spoke about it, the Rabbi disagrees. Bezdin decides what's best for the children.
There it's about what's best for the children.
Yeah. Where are we up to over here again? So let's read quickly the Mechaber. A guy brings his child, come a guy in Moisei. A guy. Them Eloi Av, Ibules guy by himself, or immer wie Yusel is guy, bez them a guy in Moisei. Sheschus hiloi. Bezuchan und shloi befunav. You know what that means? Schus hiloi, zuchan shloi befunav? The Gemara says, a very famous Gemara. You know, there's such a thing. I see a Aved on the street, and I know you need an iPhone, so I could pick it up and have a mind that should become yours and becomes yours. I pick it up and I say, "What's your first name?" Dan. Then I say becomes yours now, not because you made me a shliach. As zuchen ashrem tam stich, tois is argues zuchen beuden shloi befunav, because you needed it, and it's a schus for you to get a free item. You need it. So the same thing over here. Bestin does the Geiris as schus for even though the child is not. When he's not here, the child is a child. He doesn't have das yet. It's like he's not here to have das. It's very interesting how, and the Chreinim have a whole lumdus how this works. The Gemara calls it zochul nishlei befunav, because he doesn't have das yet. He doesn't understand yet. So we do it for him. That's Bezin. Bezin does as din Bezin. Zochul nishlei befunav. He could be moicha when he gets older. Not we ask him. When he gets older, but that's what they were asking last week. Many people thought that there's an official meeting. Someone said over here last week, official meeting. We sit down with the child. Do you want to be Jewish? You don't want to be Jewish? No. The Ramosha says that's only if the child was adopted. But the child not adopted on his own, he gets older. That's only at the bar mitzvah time. If he didn't be meicha then, he says, so here it's saying like the mother brings him to the beis din. The beis din becomes the father. So right, sort of to speak. Yeah,
is the child who's supposed to be asked whether he wants to keep or not?
That's what I said. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't say that. That's what I was trying to explain. The Shulchan Aruch says he could be moicha. So people understood that there's an official sit down. Someone even said that he heard you get a bezdin. He says, no, you don't get a bezdin together. So the Shulchan Aruch says you could be moicha. There's another question. The Moshe asks, do we tell him at the bar mitzvah or you don't tell him? So he says, an adopted child, you must tell him at the bar mitzvah, you are adopted. You're not our child. We made you a ger, and do you want or not? But if the father was megayed him, only if he is moicha later. But at the bar mitzvah, he has to be moicha. What does that mean?
Essentially, you're getting cash from all your relatives, but if not, it's going back.
Oh.
You said if the father was megayed, then
He could be moicha when he's by the bar mitzvah.
you don't have to ask. Oh, he could be moicha.
But you don't ask him. There's no official sitting down. We ask.
I see. In other words, the father converted. They couldn't have children, so they adopted. So he can be both child.
Because the father, if he adopted a child, it's not your child.
Oh, okay.
You remember, this is very important. even your own child is not yours, but you are responsible.
But he's not responsible in a sense, because he was retired. Something like that.
Which case are you talking about?
We said if, there was a case where the father was not Jewish. I guess the mother was Jewish, but they couldn't have children.
And they adopted a child.
He had adopted a child while he was not Jewish.
Right,
But
so
now he's not Jewish. And then he converted,
the child was converted. Right?
but the father never converted.
But that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Oh, I see. So when the father was, so when the boy is,
The child is on the boy. Since he was not their child, he was adopted. So that, because it's not such a schus, because maybe you could have nice Christian people adopting him too, and atheists also adopting him. So it's not such a.
But if an adopted father was Jewish, then it's different. You're saying.
I don't know if the father converted the children.
Father converted him together with the child.
Oh.
Jimmy had a child with his wife, and they decided not to become Geirim. So since Jimmy is the father and he's responsible for the child, he can make he has a right to make him a ger.
Which is the case here.
He has a right to make him a.
Jewish.
The whole family converts with little kids.
A father is coming, and the father is coming with his wife.
Oh, I see. They already had kids.
Yes.
They all converted.
Yes.
And now,
So now, no, but the question is, how? What you are? Jimmy and his wife Sally are converting now. They have a child. What right do they have to tell the child to become Jewish now?
okay.
So we say that's the biggest chus. If we becoming Geirim, it's the biggest chus that will take care of you. For a child to have parents is the biggest, so they could guide him because it's a great chus.
Right.
But if it's not this way, you understand? If it's we adopted a child out of nowhere,
Oh, I see. Okay.
it's not the parents. Who asked you to adopt me? I could have nice Christian, Catholic, or who knows parents, Buddhist.
In that case, he can have a choice.
Right.
But in this case, he doesn't
Right.
have a choice. Less choice.
Less choice.
Less choice. Got it.
Okay.